I know it's getting better apparently. Aldo, were you scared by Gemu, someone's saying?
So the funny thing is with the small rhinos, I would probably jump back to what we were talking about, but the small rhinos, even though they look small and cuddly, are only 4 months old, but they would, without doubt, take you out and could easily kill you. That's why, we've had so much training, a whole morning's worth of training to be able to walk in and stand next to the rhinos. No one's allowed to do that generally at the sanctuary, and we were lucky enough to do that. But it took a whole morning of training just to be able to stand near the rhino, and it is scary regardless.
Just to put it into perspective, like they're 4 month to 8 month old rhino, and they'd like be rubbing their head against you, and it'd be absolutely painful. They'd lean against you, and they'd be crushing you against the fence. So even though they look cute and small, they're pretty dangerous.
Okay, so some questions. So the first one was, do you believe in rhino conservation in the UK?
Not massively sure what that question means, but generally if you're talking about as a species as a whole and what every country can do, then yes, that's, every country's got a responsibility. Just because they're in Africa doesn't mean that it's only South Africa and Africa that needs to look after them. These animals are, a heritage to the entire, world, not just one continent. So I think every country's got their own part that they can play in the, looking after them, stopping them from being extinct, and also stopping them from being poached.
I mean, yeah, exactly. The planet's a biosphere in itself, so whatever happens in one place will have a ripple effect and affect us in a place that's the other side of the planet. So it has a massive impact on all of us, even if we don't think it does.
What skill sets do you think you can bring from your kind of military experience, bring to anti-poaching?
I think that Fox is probably best to answer that, but the first thing that we should probably say that we've noticed in the entire trip is that it's not about coming out to South Africa and Africa as a whole and going out with a rifle and shooting poachers. The problem is so much more complicated than we both felt or even knew about before we even came here, and it's not, it's a war on many fronts. Yes, the poachers are doing bad things, but it's, there's a lot of other political and economical factors that we've found out since coming here that are having an effect on it, and it's so complicated, very, very complicated, and the skill set that we've got, Fox is probably better to chat about that.
Yeah, exactly. So the skill set we've got, we can sort of almost be there to give them a little bit of basic knowledge training, raise awareness, make them feel empowered and motivated, but most of it comes from raising awareness back home where you guys are, and explaining to you what the dynamics are out here and how complicated it is, and then getting us to sort of help fund the rangers so they can take the fight to the poachers, to then give space to the decision makers at a higher level to sort of come up with a plan where there's no poaching necessary.
That comes down to what Fox is saying. That all boils down to demand. Demand is the key to this, but we do not live in a world where we think if you block out rhino poaching, that's it. Or rhino horn poaching. As soon as you stamp that out, there'll be something else which is in demand, whether it's giraffe hide or whether it's lion bones or whatever it is. That demand on the black market will be there. So just by stomping one out doesn't mean that you automatically stomp out all wildlife crime. So this is all the complicated side of it that we've seen. It's not just a simple case of going out on the ground with guns and stopping the poachers on the ground. That only buys breathing space, which is what we're finding at the minute. But demand is key.
Great. Question from Emma. What would you find was the most challenging thing you've done, and what would you take away from your experience here?
The most challenging thing is... there's been a lot, isn't there? Most challenging thing, I'll rattle off all of them, is going out on patrol with the rangers that are used to working in the heat, concentrating on, staying in line with those guys when you're out on foot, literally 20 metres away from black rhino, which are very aggressive, 30 metres away from elephant, which are trying to eat and getting sort of disturbed by us walking through, down to the nitty gritty of trying to break down, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically trying to build relationships with people you've never met before, to literally being told what to do when you walk into a pen that's looking after baby rhino that could possibly charge you and break both legs, and so on and so forth. So the whole thing's been really challenging, but at the same time it's been really exhilarating and informative, and it's one of the best things I've done.
If there's one thing you give to APU units, what would it be?
I think without doubt what the AP units need to have more than anything else is a sense of belonging and a sense of that they belong to something bigger. There is only a very small difference between being a game ranger and then being someone who's then been poached to then poach. There's a if you're earning quite a little amount of money, and someone comes up to you and says, "We'll give you X amount of money for just showing you where the rhino is," there's money talks, and the rest is basically just down to that person on the ground. And what we can do, and what you can do, and what everyone can do, is to get behind the rangers, get behind the APUs, give them the right kit, give them the support that they need to be able to do the job. Because actually, when you're on the ground, we can both vouch for this. More than money, or what's more valuable than money, is the fact that you know that someone is backing you up and supporting you, whether it's having the right boots, whether it's having the right kit, or whether it's having the support to know that if you've shot someone because you've been told to do it and that's part of your job, is that you've got the backup legally, financially, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, to put that into perspective really quickly, is we were meeting APU anti-poaching units, walking alongside them, and all we had to do was say thank you, shake their hand, and tell them that they were doing a good job, and that empowered them more than a shed load of cash, because cash goes, it goes. But if they were given kit and told that they were doing an amazing job by people that weren't even in their own country, then that lets them know that it's a global thing and people are actually aware and interested in what's going on.
Great. So a lot of people are asking about how Jemu, little baby Jemu, is.
Yeah, strong. Strong and scary.
The thing is with these baby rhinos, so when you go in to feed them, and you've got some that are 4 months, some that are 8 months, some that are 9 months, most of these baby rhino are, they've gone through a traumatic time. Jemu, her mother was shot, she died, and then Jemu was by her side for 4 days while her mother's carcass rotted in the hot African sun. So that baby rhino, which are quite sentient, intelligent beings, are then, they're traumatized by what's happened, and then they get picked up, they get darted, and then they get brought back to a sanctuary where they're then tried to rehabilitate them, and some of them can't eat, they can't move, they've got PTSD symptoms, which, linking it back into Veterans of Wildlife, a lot of the people that Veterans of Wildlife will try and involve also have similar sort of symptoms, and I think that's probably, when you see these baby rhino, they're quite affected by it.
Yeah, and what the people are doing, the volunteers and the staff at the sanctuaries are trying to do is trying to get these animals that have been massively affected by what they've seen and experienced, and get them put back in, essentially, when and where they can, into reserves or into parks, so they can then breed and basically, keep that species going. So it's a massively important part.
Great. Someone's asking, does safari tourism contribute negatively, do you think, towards poaching?
It's something, to be honest, that we don't actually know a huge amount about. But from what we've seen, and being honest, it doesn't appear to be that there's huge amounts of wild places in Africa. It was the one thing that we were surprised by, is that most of the land is split up into a game reserve, whether it's a sanctuary, whether no one's allowed in there, whether public are allowed in there. I can only imagine that without game drives and without the commercial safari side of it, with no animals, there is no industry. And for a big part of South Africa or Africa, without the animals and without that industry, I'm imagining there's not a lot of money coming into it. But I mean, this is just from what we've seen.
I'd say safari tourism is what's keeping people funding the anti-poaching unit, because there's a huge industry there which is not actually harming anything, and then there's another industry that's the demand. It's all about supply and demand, and that industry's the one that's killing off these species, not the safari tourism.
Great. So Ali is asking about the Black Mambas, all-female unit, anti-poaching unit. Do you want to talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, they're a small bunch of girls that are basically the front line of defence for the Baluli Game Reserve. They're run by a guy called Craig. He's very knowledgeable. He's a very inspiring and infectious person, and he runs those girls to a very high level of professionalism. They're very professional. They turn up. They do an extremely hard job, unarmed, and it's unarmed for a reason. It's almost like the British Bobby on the beat. They don't have them armed for a reason. It's to sort of deter people and show that they're still not confrontational. So it's twofold. They're brave, they go out there. They also go into the local communities and talk to the local communities about how important conservation and wildlife is. They play a huge part.
Yeah, I think the other reason why it's important for us to get behind those guys is the fact that, as far as we can gather, it's quite a matriarchal society. So they, like Foxy said, they go into the environment, back home, and they go back to villages, and they can pass on that information. Whereas, from what the studies show and from what we've seen on the ground, is that there's a very small difference and a small shift between someone who might be a game ranger, who might be a poacher, who lives in the local village and is easily bribed by money. It seems like the women that are in the Black Mambas have much more integrity. Not saying that the other guys don't, but that's why Craig's found quite a lot of success with them. They're loyal to the cause of protecting the wildlife in the parks.
Okay, fine. So, Fox, I think your dad is asking, what will deter the on-the-ground poacher?
What will deter the on-the-ground poacher is basically a lot of the things we've just spoken about. So, swept up anti-poaching units, units like the Black Mambas. They do fence patrols, they intelligence gather, they collect information from camera traps. There's an abundance of stuff that these people do. As long as that presence is still there and people know that there are swept up units on the ground, that's going to deter the poacher. And also the other thing that will deter the poacher, bigger picture, is stopping the demand.
You've got to remember as well, these guys are coming, say for example, in some of the parks, they're coming from Mozambique border, they're coming from 70, 80 kilometres away at night, in one night. So they're doing that entire bound in a group of 2 or 3 at night, usually on a full moon. It's almost a full moon tonight here. So tonight, without doubt, there's poachers in the parks doing what we're talking about. But they're highly motivated. What else would make you walk through 70 kilometres one way through lions, buffalo, elephant, rhino, hippos? All of these animals are out there to kill you, but there must be something there that's making them get out there and do it. That's 140 kilometres, over the space of 2 days that they're doing at night in a pretty dangerous environment. So, like Foxy says, it comes down to demand. As long as that demand's there, people will risk their life to get the money.
Well, so someone's asking, so when's the most kind of the time when poachers usually hit the rhinos? Is that at night time? What's the protection like for the anti-poaching units at that time?
They'll do a lot of movement at times that suit them. They're not well funded. They pay better than some people in the whole poaching industry, as in anti-poaching and poaching. But then they're not well kitted out, so they'll do things at the time that's best for them. So the right times of the month are full moon. They can move at night very quickly. They know the ground, and they'll look at where the animals are. So that's why people are very protective about telling people about where those herds are, because essentially, if you tell, if that's out and broadcasted, then the people that you don't want to know it, they're there.
Great. So lots of people are asking, how can they help?
Lots of different ways that you can help. Number one is probably find a charity that you can get involved with. We've worked with several. Veterans Wildlife, obviously, is the one that Fox and I are here as ambassadors for, that are trying to sort of tie in lots of different organisations. The main thing is basically funding and awareness. Demand, is at a much higher strategic level in, for government people to get involved with. But certainly on a basic level, if you're sat at home and you want to get help or you want to help Veterans Wildlife, you can donate to them. Their money comes in, and that goes 100% out to people on the ground. It helps people like us to come out and impart our knowledge onto the APUs, onto Black Mambas, onto different people that are out on the ground, and also providing kit. I mean, for example, there's some units that we've worked with that need GPS units. They only need 4, and they're £100 each. So something like that is really easy to do. But as far as we're concerned, I think it needs to be tied in through Veterans of Wildlife, and they can then sort of pass that information on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're ambassadors for them, but they're sort of like becoming the overarching umbrella group that sort of tie. We've worked with lots of different groups, APU units, and agencies out here, and we're sort of starting to sort of like feed into them and tell them what we can do for them or what people at home can do for them. And it is about small funding. It's about empowering these guys that are on the ground, giving them decent bits of kit which don't cost a lot of money, making them feel empowered and making them feel like they've got a real purpose globally, not just within their country. And basically sort of spreading the word as well, because essentially we say it's all about the demand, that's for the government, but if we don't kick and scream about it, they're not going to listen to anyone.
Great. People are asking how they donate, so...
Veterans, if you go onto the Veterans for Wildlife website or Twitter page or Facebook, there's a link there that they can donate. As far as I'm aware, it's a small donation that they can make either monthly or one-off donations. When the money comes into Veterans for Wildlife, it's then split between all the charities that we're working with at the minute, or organisations like Rhino Cryogenetics, or like the Rhino Sanctuary we were at the last couple of days, or whether it's going to APUs or whether it's supporting kit. That's probably the best way that we know at the minute that you can do that.
Great, and there's, we'll sum it up now, probably the last couple of questions. Someone's asking, do you have any ideas on how to actually attack the demand?
Right, the only way you're ever going to stop stuff, anything in this world, is by educating people. And once you educate people, then you bang home about what is right and what is wrong. And that's it. You raise awareness, you get the big hitters to get involved. Once you've raised their awareness, they need to then put policies in place and educate the people that think they're doing right, but which is actually wrong.
This is part of the whole complication of the whole thing, is that you've got, in certain countries in the Far East, you've got, from what we can see, you've got a sort of rising middle class that now want stuff that they could never have before, and rhino horn, unfortunately, is one of them. Ivory is one of them, and there's probably several other things like pangolin. There's container loads of pangolin going out of, which is a small creature, going out of Africa on a weekly or monthly basis, which are decimating the supplies of it. And that's all going pretty much, as far as we're aware, to the Far East, where there's demand for it. And this rising middle class want stuff that they never had before. It's about, Foxy saying, about educating and about making people aware of the fact that actually what they're doing is decimating the world's wildlife.
Brilliant. Just to say that loads of messages are coming through, just to say what an amazing, amazing job both of you guys are doing, raising awareness, and thanking you for all your updates and stuff. So that's all good. Has anyone got any final questions for the guys before we're about to go? You're getting lots of love hearts, lots of likes. Any more questions?
But if you don't have any more questions, go to Veterans for Wildlife Facebook, Twitter, or website. Get on there, see how you can help, see how you can donate, and see all the charities and organisations that get involved with, right?
Yeah, and you'll see more from us
Hopefully
out
see
here
you at
next year.
Christmas, Aldo. Love mum. Sorry, from your mum.
I'm not falling for that again.
Are you looking forward to coming home, boys?
It's nice and warm out here.
I think it's pretty wet back home, but we've both fallen in love with, we've seen much more than anyone would ever be allowed to see in this country from a lot of different sides, and it just gives you that buzz to come back and try and do something, make a difference, I guess.
Someone's asking how big are the bugs. They're very big. I can answer that. Right, so are you guys ready to...
Yeah.
Yeah.